Two things. First of all, Finland, since it broke away from the Russian Empire in 1917, has always been a problematic territory in the eyes of Soviet Union, then Russia, and in general in this East-West balance. And the neutral position was not necessarily a choice by the Finns. It was more imposed by the big Russian neighbor, who said, this is the minimum. If you're not part of us, at least you will not be part of the other side.
Of course, the two countries fought a brutal war during the Second World War beforehand.
They did, and the Finns, a very small nation of a few million people, resisted in an amazing manner. Which brings me to the second point, and that is maybe the biggest strategic mistake that Vladimir Putin has made in this war in Ukraine. I think one of the things he counted on was the weakness of NATO, was the inability of NATO to come to a unanimous front and a unanimous position in this war. He felt that under Trump, NATO had been weakened in general, and he found that his single move in Ukraine had suddenly rebuilt NATO as a real force to be reckoned with. And not only has NATO been strengthened through this unanimity, it is now also considering this expansion, which no doubt will go through. Certainly with Finland, probably with Sweden too. So he got the exact opposite result. What several American presidents failed to achieve, which is a strengthening of NATO and a larger investment of NATO members in defense budgets, Vladimir Putin single-handedly achieved.
There is one country, though, that seems to not be that happy about Finland joining NATO. That is Turkey. Why is that?
It's a good it's a good question. It's not the only one. There might be a problem. Accepting a new member requires a unanimous vote of all members. There might also be a problem with Viktor Orban in Hungary, simply because of his relatively close ties to Russia. He may be the weak link here. But I have a feeling that in the end, all NATO members will agree. Finland is not just a territory that is added with a very long border with Russia. It is also a significant military force. It has a real military force with an air force and with a real army service that is
mandatory,
mandatory army service and a reserve, and it's a real army. And there are some NATO members who will probably contribute less to the strength of this strategic group. I think the last thing that has to be said is that maybe for the Russians, what will be most significant is not the simple joining of Finland to NATO, but what kind of military presence NATO will have on Finnish territory. Because if the status quo is maintained and only the Finnish army remains in Finland, that is one thing. If other NATO members start positioning themselves there, the Americans or the Brits with sophisticated weapons, that could be considered as a real threat to the Russians. We'll have to see.
Right, certainly very interesting. And we hear there the Finns saying that they do want to maintain good relations with Russia. They have a border that has been relatively peaceful in recent years. Obviously, this is a shakeup. We'll have to see what the impact will be. Daniel Shek, political commentator, former Israeli ambassador to France, thank you for helping us break that down.